Picture this. You're driving down I-94, traffic slows down out of nowhere, you hit your brakes, but the driver behind you doesn't. Smash. The impact forces your head violently forward and then backward. Amidst the adrenaline and twisted metal, your head starts pounding. Because of that splitting headache, the paramedics transport you straight to the nearest emergency room. In the ER, the medical team springs into action. Because you struck your head or complained of a headache after a violent collision, the standard of care requires the ER doctor to order a CT scan of your brain. You're rolled into the machine, the scan takes a few minutes, and a while later the doctor walks in with a smile and says, "Good news. Your CT is completely normal. We're going to discharge you home." You breathe a massive sigh of relief. You take your discharge papers, which list your diagnosis as a simple headache or minor concussion, and you go home thinking that you're fine. But weeks later, you're still struggling. The headaches won't stop, you can't focus, and you file an insurance claim. And that's when the insurance adjuster drops the hammer. They look at your file and say, "We aren't paying for any ongoing treatment. Your ER records clearly show a normal CT scan. If you were really brain injured, it would have shown up. You're fine." Now, if you don't know any better, you might believe them. But as both a chiropractic physician and personal injury attorney, I see the exact trap play out from both sides of the coin, the medical side and the legal side. And today I'm going to expose exactly why a normal ER CT scan does not mean that your brain isn't injured, and how insurance companies use it to gaslight you. To understand why the insurance adjuster is dead wrong, we have to look at the legal and practical purpose of the emergency room. The ER is not a long-term healing clinic. Its primary duty is triage to make sure you're not actively dying. When an ER doctor looks at a patient from a car crash, their job is to rule out immediate, catastrophic, life-threatening conditions. When they order a head CT under the standard of care, they are looking for three specific dangerous things. They're looking to rule out a skull fracture. They're looking to rule out an active, acute brain bleed, and they're looking to rule out major structural injuries that require immediate neurosurgery. So in the eyes of the ER staff, if you don't have a life-threatening injury that requires immediate surgery, you're stable. And because you're stable, you can handle any remaining problems on an outpatient basis. So they give you those discharge papers, write down normal imaging, and send you on your way. But normal to the ER just means you aren't going to die in the waiting room tonight. It does not mean that you aren't injured. Let's take a look at what the ER doctor is actually seeing. On the screen right now is a photo of two CTs of a brain. On the left, you see this bright white ring around the edge. That's the skull. A CT scan is fantastic at showing bone. Now look at the dark spaces inside. That is your cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF, which cushions the brain. The brain is bathed in this fluid. Notice how everything is perfectly symmetrical. The left side mirrors the right side. All structures are exactly where they're supposed to be. There's no pressure. There's no distortion. So to the ER doctor, this is a beautiful sight. It means no surgical emergency. Now let's take a look at the right side of the screen. This is a CT scan of a subdural hematoma. Notice on the left side of that right brain, there is a massive, bright white crescent shape. That is blood that is pooling between the brain and the skull. Now remember, The skull and the brain and the spinal cord, or the central nervous system as we know it, is a closed system. So if you're bleeding into the brain, you're causing pressure, and you can see and look at how it's pushing the entire brain over to the other side. Medically, we call that a mass effect. We'll call it either a shift to the right or a shift to the left, because there's pressure on the brain and it's causing pressure on the structures, and the structures move to the side opposite of the fluid accumulation. This graphic on the right is a surgical emergency most of the time. This is what the ER doctor is actively trying to rule out. If your brain doesn't look like this nightmarish image on the right, your CT scan is labeled normal. See, but here's the catch. Just because your brain isn't bleeding or shifted out of place, it doesn't mean that it wasn't damaged. A normal CT scan absolutely cannot rule out an MTBI, a mild traumatic brain injury, commonly known as a concussion. Why? Because the CT is a structural test, not a functional test. It looks at the big picture architecture. It can't see what is happening on the microscopic level. When your head whips back and forth on the highway, your brain sloshes inside your skull. At a microscopic level, your cells, the neurons, the cell bodies, and the long pathways called axons get stretched, twisted, and sheared. This is called diffuse axon or axonal injury. It disrupts the delicate chemical and electrical balances your brain uses to think, to move, to feel. Think of it like this. A CT scan is like a satellite photo of a house from space. It can tell you if the roof collapsed or if the house blew up, but it can't tell you if your Wi-Fi router is broken or if the electrical wiring inside the walls are fried. To diagnose a microscopic functional injury like an MTBI, a standard ER CT scan is completely blind. These injuries require specialized diagnostic imaging like functional MRI or diffusion tensor imaging, which is a type of MRI that we call a DTI, alongside comparative neurophysiological testing. The doctors put all that together to determine what is going on. So what is the moral of the story? Do not let the insurance adjuster gaslight you into believing you aren't injured just because your paperwork says normal CT. They know exactly what a CT scan does and doesn't show, but they use the word normal as a legal weapon to cut off your medical care and to lower your settlement value. And more importantly, do not ignore what your own body is telling you. A brain injury can take days or even weeks to fully manifest as the chemical crisis in your brain unfolds. If you or a loved one have been in an accident and they're experiencing continued throbbing headaches, ringing in the ears, sensitivity to light or noise, difficulty sleeping, balance issues or dizziness, or memory or mood changes, do yourself or your family member a big favor. Don't just tough it out. Don't take the ER's word for it. Go and see a doctor who specializes in brain injuries and post-concussion care. Because from a medical standpoint, the earlier you get an accurate diagnosis and begin treatment, the better your chances of recovery are. And from a legal standpoint, documenting these injuries properly is the only way to protect your rights. Don't let a normal piece of paper dictate your health or your case. If you would like to learn the 5 tricks the insurance company prays you don't know, join me in the next video. It will give you a deep insight into the insurance claims process after an accident. I'll see you over there. I am Guy DiMartino, and I am meeting you at the intersection of law and medicine. Have a great day.